Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, it's a sunny, beautiful day, and we're going out to a garden. But not just any garden, we're going to a topiary garden to look at beautiful sculptures. And we're going to be trying to get our visitors to get the best view from the edges of the garden, and sometimes rearranging sculptures to make sure they get that best view. Today we're taking a look at Topiary. This is a game from Renegade Game Studios. It's for 2 to 4 players, plays in 15 to 30 minutes. We're going to be doing a rule school, so I'm going to teach you how to set up and play the game rule for rule so that you don't have to read the rule book yourself. So let's get started. Topiary is a light strategy game for 2 to 4 players, where you'll start with a garden with just one sculpture face up. And throughout the game, you'll be placing visitors that will be looking down different sight lines and optionally replacing tiles with ones that will give you a better view of them. Because at the end of the game, for each sculpture that's in ascending value, you'll get face value of those for your visitors. But be careful, just when you think you're setting yourself up for big scoring at the end of the game, another player might go through the sight line in the opposite way and replace this tile with something that stops you from scoring all of these because this is too tall to see all the rest. Players will not only be looking down through rows, but also columns and diagonals to score points. And you'll get bonus points for being able to see more than one of the same type. And even the tiles left in your hand at the end of the game can score you points if you've played your tiles right. And there's also an advanced drafting variant that reduces the amount of luck in the game. To set up, each player is going to take a set of visitors which have different types of meeples and colors. For 2 players, you're going to take all 8 visitors of that color. If you're playing with 3 players, you'll each take 6 visitors. And if you're playing with 4 players, you'll each take 5 visitors. Any visitors not used in the game can be placed back in the box. Next, if you're playing with 2 or 3 players, you'll go through all these sculpture tiles and you'll find all 5 numbered 1 through 5 of a single type. In this case, we have 1 through 5 for the swans. You can select any single type of all 5 and remove them from the game only in a 2 or 3 player game. You'll then form a stack of the sculpture tiles and you'll create a 5x5 grid. You'll then flip face up the center tile. Next, from the stack, you'll deal 3 sculpture tiles face down to each player to make their hand. Any leftover tiles on the stack at this point can be removed from the game. The player that's most recently trimmed a real plant is the first player. If nobody has a green thumb, determine the first player randomly. Set the scoring board and the scoring markers aside for now because all of the scoring happens at the end of the game. The goal of the game is to get the most points, and you gather those points by having your visitors look through straight sight lines and look at different sculptures of ascending values because each of these are going to be worth face value if you see them all. And you'll also be getting bonuses for the same types of sculptures in those sight lines. Each player is going to take a turn, and then things will go in a clockwise manner until the end of the game. On players' turns, they're going to be placing a visitor, and then optionally rearranging sculptures by taking tiles off the board and placing one from their hand back in here face up. On your turn, first you must position one of your visitors, which is mandatory, into a sight line. A sight line can either be in a horizontal manner at the end of a row, in a vertical manner at the bottom or top of a column, or in a diagonal manner at the diagonal end of any tile. Now these diagonals can also be in the middle like this. This could also be a diagonal for this way. With the only rule saying that you cannot place one if there's already a visitor there of any type, yours or anybody else's. So if it was the yellow player's turn, they could not go here because there's already a visitor there. Once they've placed that visitor, optionally, they can rearrange sculptures, which means in the sight line that they just placed their visitor in, they can take any face down tile and put it in their hand. They can replace that face up with any tile from their hand, which could be the one they just picked up, but it doesn't have to be. So they replaced that with a 5, for example. After players mandatorily place the visitor and then optionally rearrange sculptures, it goes to the next player's turn. This continues until the end of the game. So at the end, once the visitors have all been placed, it might look something like this, with some visitors going diagonally in different spots, some going down sight lines of rows, some going up and down in columns, and you may have a different amount of tiles face up and face down depending on what choices players made throughout the game. To score, you look at each visitor individually. and you look down their specific sightline. For example, if we were scoring this visitor, we would look down this straight row here. Each of these that they can see, they will get the face value points for. But in order for it to be seen, everyone closer to that, between that and the visitor, has to be a lower value. Another way to say this is, as a visitor looks down, they're only going to see things that are in ascending order. So it sees this because it's the first one. It sees this because 4 is greater than 1. It's taller. Think of the number being the height. Now this one does not count because it's the same height as this, which means they wouldn't be able to see this one because this is blocking it. Likewise, this one is smaller than something in front of it from this sight line, so you would not get points for that. The 5 is the tallest, and so they would be able to see that because it's taller than all the ones in front of it from this sight line. So in this case, we would score 1, 4, and 5 for a total of 10 for that sight line. At this point, you use the scoreboard to track everybody's points. In addition to the face value points of the visible sculptures, you also get bonuses if you can see more than one of a single type that's visible. This was seen, this was not seen because it was blocked from here, and this was seen. So in this case, there's 2 of them. If you have at least 2, you get 1 point for each of those. In this case, we would get 2 more points. But let's say these 2 tiles were actually swapped. So we saw this one, and this one. The face value points would be the same because these were the same values, but now we can actually see 3 visible ones of this same type. So we would have gotten 3 bonus points instead of 2. And again, you always do that for only visible ones of the same type, and if you have at least 2 of those, you get 1 point for each of them. Let's take a look at one more example. Looking diagonal, because it might be different for you to see it this way, is this visitor is looking here. These 2 face down tiles do nothing. This is 5 points because it's not blocked by anything. This is blocked because of the same value or same height sculpture in front of it, so this player would just get 5 points. You will continue scoring this way. We recommend going in a clockwise manner until you get back to the start, updating everybody's scoring respectively. Next, each player can score the tiles in their hand. You'll have 3 tiles left, and you'll be able to score points on this if any of your visitors saw a sculpture of the same type that was larger anywhere in the garden. So if this was for the red player, we'd look to see if they saw anything larger than the dinosaur. The numbers only go up to 5. There is the 5 dinosaur, and no red visitors saw it. If they did, they would get this face value points, but because they didn't, this would get flipped over like this. The next one is the 2 of this bush here, and we look here and we see something larger with the red, and so yes, this will get face value of 2 points. Here, this visitor also sees something larger of the same type, 5, so they'll get this 3 points. So total the tiles on hand got this red player 5 more points. You do this for each player. After all that scoring, you see who wins. As players cross the 49 mark, they'll come back to 0 and flip their marker over to denote it's 50 plus whatever number they end up on. Whoever has the most points wins. If it's tied, whoever got more points from the tiles in hand scoring that we just went over wins. If it's still tied, whoever was later in turn order. There's an advanced drafting variant that reduces the luck of the game. During setup, once all players have gotten their 3 tiles, the player that's last in turn order, which is the player to the right of the start player, will get any of the leftover tiles. From all of these tiles, they'll select 3 of them to keep and pass the rest of them to the player to their right, which is going in reverse turn order. This will continue until the start player is the last one to pick. Any tiles left over at that point gets removed and placed in the box so that everyone still starts with 3 tiles. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Topiary and get to the fun much quicker than you normally would have if you needed to read the rules yourself. Now, if you have further questions, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video. That's the best place to ask them because I'll get notified, but also so will the publisher.